Stop. She hurled the glass against the marble wall, and the crash scattered into silence. Security froze, uncertain whether to intervene. He, flawless in his tailored suit with gold cufflinks, lunged forward, reaching for the $3 million check lying exposed on the polished table. Around them, the crowd shifted, every phone raised, screens glowing like a field of eyes waiting for blood. She stepped into his path, her body close enough to brush his arm, her fingers sliding deliberately down his sleeve. The faint scrape of her nails across the fabric drew his gaze. "You buy silence," she whispered, steady but sharp, but not this time. In her palm, the phone lit up, the message glowing with finality: lawsuit filed. Court 9 a.m. The words cut the air, and the crowd gasped as though they had all read them at once. He pressed his hand hard onto the check, palm flattening the paper, as if sheer force could keep it from slipping away. His lips curled into a smile that was no smile at all, only threat. "I'll destroy you first," he murmured, his voice low, but the words carried through the stillness. The crowd leaned in, caught between fear and fascination. Then, breaking the line of onlookers, a reporter stepped forward, raising his camera, the red light blinking alive. The flash struck her face, freezing her in the glare, but she didn't recoil. Her eyes locked on him, unwavering. She leaned closer, breath grazing his jawline, calm yet edged with steel. "Take your hand off it," she said, the command quiet but unmistakable. The check gleamed beneath his grip, a hostage under his authority, while the reporter's finger hovered just above the record button. He tilted his head slightly, the scent of whiskey carried on his breath, and his grip tightened on the paper. "One move," he said, voice deliberate and sharp, "and you lose everything." The words hung heavy, slicing through the hush like a blade. The crowd rippled with unease, yet no one dared to step forward. Her jaw clenched, but her eyes burned with defiance. Slowly, she lifted her hand, hovering it directly above his wrist, her intent clear. The air thickened as if the entire room inhaled at once, waiting for the clash. Phones shook in the hands of the onlookers, every lens locked on the two figures frozen in their silent war. Her lips curved into the faintest of smiles, unyielding and fierce. When she spoke, her voice cut clean through the silence, not just to him but to every witness in the room. "Watch it burn." The silence cracked when she slammed her hand down on the table, right beside his. The sound echoed across the marble room, jolting the crowd. The check trembled between their palms, a fragile prize neither was willing to release. She stared straight into his eyes, her voice steady but fierce. "Let them see it. I'm not afraid anymore." The reporter's camera light blinked, capturing every frame, and the crowd surged forward, hungry for a scandal. Phones tilted closer, arms stretching over shoulders. Security hesitated at the edge of the chaos, waiting for orders that never came. She raised her phone higher, the message still glowing: "Lawsuit filed." The red reflection lit her face like a brand. He leaned in, his jaw tight, his whisper cutting through the noise. "You think this makes you powerful? You've just declared war." His hand pressed harder, veins standing in his wrist as he anchored the check beneath his weight. The smell of his cologne and whiskey mingled, suffocating, but she didn't flinch. Her fingers slid over the paper and then, suddenly, she pulled. Gasps broke from the crowd as the check tore halfway in her grip, the sound sharp, final. His face twisted with fury. "You'll regret that," he snarled. He lunged forward, gripping her wrist, but she twisted free, stepping back just enough to keep control. The half-torn check fluttered in her hand, proof that the balance had shifted. Then, out of nowhere, the lights flickered. The massive chandelier above them shook as if rattled by an invisible hand. The crowd screamed, some stumbling back, others rushing to the exits. Only the red record light from the reporter's camera stayed steady, glowing in the dark like an unblinking eye. She steadied herself, breath sharp in her chest. Her heart raced, but her mind was clear. "This is my choice," she said, loud enough for the room to hear. She held the torn check up high, her arm trembling but unbroken. Her defiance lit the room more than any chandelier could. And then, another voice cut through the chaos. Cold, sharp, unfamiliar. "She's not the only one with evidence." Every head turned toward the entrance, where a figure stepped into the half-dark, holding up a black flash drive that caught the light. The crowd erupted in shouts, the phones swung toward the newcomer. Her pulse spiked. She recognized the flash drive instantly. It was hers. The flash drive gleamed in the stranger's hand, catching the glow of the emergency lights. Gasps rippled through the crowd, phones swung in his direction, and the chaos shifted instantly toward the new arrival. She froze, her stomach twisting. That wasn't just any drive, it was hers, the one she had hidden. "Looking for this?" the stranger called, his voice calm yet slicing through the noise. He was tall, dressed too plainly to belong in the opulent room, but his confidence pulled every eye. The man stepped forward, ignoring the guards who moved uncertainly at the edges. His gaze locked on her, not on the man beside her. "You're not the only one who wants the truth out." Her pulse hammered. She lifted the torn check higher, a symbol in her hand, refusing to let it vanish under his palm. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice carrying through the fractured silence. The stranger smiled, slow and deliberate, raising the flash drive higher. "Someone who's been watching," he said. The words landed like a blade. The man beside her slammed his fist against the table, rattling the glasses. "He's lying," he roared. His authority cracked, desperation leaking into his tone. "That belongs to my office. He's a thief." But the stranger only tilted his head, unfazed. "Or maybe I'm the only one not afraid of what's inside." The crowd roared with whispers, the tension splitting into two storms, one over the check in her hand, the other over the flash drive glinting in his. For the first time, she felt the ground tilt beneath her. This wasn't just her fight anymore. The story was bigger, and now everyone knew it. She took a breath and stepped forward, refusing to shrink. "If you have proof," she said to the stranger, "then show it." Her voice was steady, though every nerve in her body screamed. The stranger nodded once, sliding the flash drive into his pocket with a smirk. "Not yet. Timing is everything." The man beside her leaned in, his words a venomous whisper. "He'll bury you with it. You think he's an ally, but he's worse than me." His grip tightened on the table, eyes blazing with a fury that could scorch. For a fleeting second, she almost believed him. But the reporter's camera swung back to the stranger, red light burning. "People won't wait," the reporter called. "If you have evidence, you release it now." The crowd shouted in agreement, the noise cresting like a wave. The stranger raised his hand to quiet them, his smile never fading. Then, with slow precision, he pointed directly at her. "She decides." The room fell into silence so sharp it ached. Every eye turned back to her, every lens focused, every breath suspended. And in that silence, the phone in her hand vibrated again. A new message burned across the screen, evidence compromised. "You are no longer safe." The warning on her phone glared back at her, its words cutting deeper than any scream in the room. "Evidence compromised. You are no longer safe." Her hand tightened around the device, and for a heartbeat she almost faltered. But then she raised her chin, refusing to let them see the fear. The crowd was watching, waiting, starving for a signal. She turned slowly toward the stranger with the flash drive. "If it's mine," she said, steady, "then you already know what it holds." Her voice carried, quiet but sharp enough to silence the whispers. For the first time, a murmur of support rippled through the audience. Someone even clapped, quickly stifled but undeniable. A spark of momentum. The man in the suit bristled, fury etched across his face. "You think one torn check and one thief will save you? You're already finished. He reached across the table, trying to yank the rest of the paper from her grasp, but she held firm, tearing it clean in two before he could claim it. The halves fluttered like broken wings to the floor, and gasps thundered from the crowd. A small victory, but hers. His roar shook the room. You've destroyed evidence, he bellowed, turning to the cameras. She's obstructing justice. But the people weren't convinced. Too many eyes had seen his desperation, too many lenses had caught his mask slipping. And in that crack, she saw his fear. The stranger stepped forward, the flash drive gleaming briefly as he pulled it halfway from his pocket. This isn't about the check, he said. This is about what was hidden, and who signed it. His eyes locked with hers. The truth is already burning its way out. Her pulse pounded. For a split second, she thought he would reveal it then and there, end everything in a single motion. But instead he slid it back into his pocket, lips curling into a knowing smile. Not yet, he whispered, loud enough for only her to hear. The timing isn't mine. It's yours. She staggered back, torn between rage and resolve. The power was in her hands, but the warning on her phone still pulsed like fire, you are no longer safe. She glanced toward the crowd, half hungry, half hostile, and knew she had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. Then a sudden commotion erupted near the entrance. Security shoved through the masses, pushing people aside. The leader barked into his earpiece, words caught on microphones, clear the floor. Warrant's been issued. Take her in. The crowd gasped, phones raised higher than ever. She froze, clutching the torn halves of the check in one hand and the glowing phone in the other. And as the guards closed in, the stranger's voice sliced through the roar, if they take her now, the truth dies with her. The guards closed in, their heavy steps thudding across the marble floor. The crowd parted, phones lifted higher, every lens ready to capture her downfall. She backed away, breath sharp, clutching the halves of the torn check in one hand and the glowing phone in the other. The message still pulsed, you are no longer safe. Stand down. One of the guards barked, reaching for her arm. She twisted away, her heel slipping on glass shards scattered across the floor. For a split second she stumbled, vulnerable, the crowd gasping as if the fall itself might break her. But she caught the edge of the table, straightened, and glared at them. You'll have to drag me, she snapped, her voice trembling but unbroken. The man in the suit spread his arms wide, his tone dripping with triumph. Arrest her. Let the world see what happens when you challenge power. His cufflinks glittered as he gestured, savoring the spectacle. For the first time, she saw not confidence but hunger. He wanted her crushed, humiliated, erased in front of everyone. The stranger stepped forward, blocking the guards for an instant. If you take her, you take me too, he said, lifting the flash drive high. His words cut through the chaos, but she saw the calculation in his eyes. He wasn't saving her out of loyalty, he was protecting his own leverage. And yet, for the first time, the crowd erupted in cheers. A flicker of support, fragile but real. She had to choose, trust the stranger and risk everything, or face the guards alone. Her chest burned, every instinct screaming for her to run, but running would mean defeat, a silent admission. Instead, she took one step forward, meeting the nearest guard's stare. You want me? She said. She extended her hand, holding out her phone. Then you take the truth with me. The guard hesitated, glancing at the screen. The words lawsuit filed blazed across it. The crowd surged, shouting, the cameras closing in like wolves. For one heartbeat, the world tilted. Then the guard ripped the phone from her grasp, shoving her back against the table. Gasps rang out as the device slipped, clattered to the floor, and skidded toward the man in the suit. He bent slowly, savoring the moment, his fingers brushing the phone. It ends here, he muttered, raising it high for the cameras. But then, the screen lit up again. A new message appeared, bold and final, "File uploaded. Evidence live." The words "file uploaded. Evidence live" glowed on the phone's screen, and the room erupted into chaos. The crowd shouted, some cheering, some screaming. Cameras flashed in a frenzy, voices collided into a storm of noise. She staggered against the table, her strength slipping as the guards tried to pin her arms. But her eyes stayed fixed, not on them, not on the man in the suit, but on the stranger holding the flash drive. He raised it slowly, the small black device catching the fractured light of the chandelier. "What you just saw," he said, his voice carrying over the storm, "is only the beginning." The crowd hushed for a moment, straining to hear. She felt her pulse hammer. He had promised answers, and now the whole world demanded them. The man in the suit stepped forward, shouting over him. "He lies. He's fabricating." But his words rang hollow, desperate. The crowd wasn't looking at him anymore. All eyes were locked on the stranger. For a brief, fragile second, the power in the room had shifted away from the man she hated and toward this shadow who had appeared from nowhere. Her knees buckled, exhaustion finally pressing down, but she forced herself upright. She couldn't collapse, not now. "If you have proof," she said, her voice breaking but still clear, "show them. Show us all." Her plea wasn't weakness, it was challenge. And it hung in the air like a blade. The stranger's eyes flicked to her, unreadable. "You think the upload saved you?" he asked, softer now. He tapped the flash drive against his palm, the motion deliberate. "What's inside this will make tonight look like nothing. But once it's out, there's no going back." Gasps rippled again. The crowd demanded more, shouts of "open it," and "tell us now," filled the hall. She reached toward him, her hand trembling, every muscle screaming. "Then give it to me," she whispered. Her voice cracked, but it cut through the noise. For the first time, his confident mask shifted. His jaw clenched, his gaze wavered. He looked almost hesitant. "Not yet," he said. "It's not complete." Her heart lurched. "Not complete," she repeated. "What do you mean?" The stranger glanced at the man in the suit, then back at her. His words dropped like a stone into the silence. "Because the missing piece is still with you." Her breath caught at the stranger's words. "The missing piece is still with you." The room tilted. For a moment she didn't know if he meant the torn check, the lawsuit, or something buried even deeper. Her fingers tightened around the scraps of paper, but doubt slid in like a knife. What if she didn't hold the power at all? The man in the suit seized the hesitation. He snatched the halves of the check from her weakened grip, tearing them further until they were nothing but confetti in his fist. "There," he spat, throwing the fragments into the air. "Gone. And with it, your last defense." The pieces fluttered down like ash, and the crowd groaned. Her chest clenched, the loss cutting sharper than she expected. It wasn't just money. It was her proof that she could stand against him, her symbol of defiance. And now it was dust. She stumbled, catching herself against the table. The cameras caught it all, her faltering body, her shaking hands. She could feel the tide turning, sympathy mixing with doubt in the watching faces. The stranger stepped closer, his flash drive still gleaming. For a heartbeat, she thought he would finally help her. But then his eyes hardened. "I can't risk everything on someone who can't even protect what she holds," he said. And with those words, he turned his back on her, stepping toward the exit. Gasps erupted, the crowd dividing, half shouting betrayal, half shouting for answers. She staggered after him, her voice breaking. "Don't walk away. If you have the truth, give it." But he didn't stop. His silhouette vanished in the glare of camera flashes, leaving her alone under the crushing weight of silence. Her knees nearly gave out. For the first time, she felt the cold edge of defeat. The man in the suit loomed over her, his grin a blade. You see? They all leave you. Even your savior. He leaned close, his whisper venomous. And tomorrow, you'll be erased. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She forced herself upright, her breath ragged, her voice raw. Erase me if you can, she whispered back. Her words trembled, but the defiance clung to them like steel. And in the back of the room, a few voices rose, not mocking, not jeering, but cheering. Small, fragile, but real. That spark steadied her. Even in ruin, someone believed. Even in betrayal, she was not entirely alone. She straightened her shoulders, lifting her chin. But just as she began to rise, a shout ripped through the hall. Lock the doors. No one leaves. The command echoed from the entrance, and heavy bolts slammed shut. Armed guards spread across the exits, sealing the room. The crowd panicked, screams bouncing off the marble walls. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. And then, the question that chilled her blood: who has the second drive? The doors slammed shut with a final metallic echo, and panic surged like a wave. People screamed, phones lifted higher, guards spread across the exits with weapons drawn. But through the chaos, the demand still rang: who has the second drive? Her chest tightened. She didn't even know a second drive existed, until now. Yet the eyes of the crowd, the guards, even the man in the suit, all snapped toward her. Suspicion burned hotter than fire. She clenched her fists, forcing her voice steady. If you think it's me, then prove it. The man in the suit stepped forward, savoring the shift. Oh, it is you, he sneered. His hand brushed his cufflinks as though adjusting a crown. She's been hiding evidence since the start. She stole from me. She blackmailed me. And now she has the second drive. His words poured like poison, feeding the crowd's fear. A ripple of doubt spread, but then, something unexpected. The reporter, still clutching his camera, shouted above the noise. No. I've seen it. She's not the thief, he is. Gasps tore through the room. The lens swung, focusing not on her but on the man in the suit. For the first time, the audience saw him cornered. Her pulse hammered. She could let the reporter carry this fight, or she could take it back into her own hands. The choice seared her. Every instinct told her she was exhausted, broken, but she knew if she stayed silent, he would twist the story again. She stepped forward, her voice raw but unshaken. Then search me. Search everything I have. I don't hide. The crowd roared, split down the middle, half jeering, half cheering. The guards hesitated, caught between orders and her defiance. For a moment, she felt a fragile victory. She was no longer the hunted, but the challenger. A spark she thought she'd lost began to return. But the man in the suit laughed, low and cruel. Search her? Fine. But check this first. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a sealed envelope, thick and heavy. He held it high, letting the cameras devour the image. Signed by her. Proof she knew everything from the beginning. Her stomach dropped. She had never seen that envelope in her life. Yet her name was scrawled across the front in her handwriting. The crowd gasped, leaning closer, hungry for the revelation. The reporter zoomed in, the red record light burning brighter. Her hand trembled, her mind racing. It was a forgery. It had to be. But how? And if he had forged this, what else could he twist? She forced herself to raise her chin, to meet the cameras with fire in her eyes. That is not mine, she said. The words echoed, but doubt lingered in the air. The man in the suit tore the envelope open with a dramatic rip. Papers spilled out, pages filled with signatures, stamps, evidence too damning to ignore. He held one page up for the crowd. This is her confession. The room erupted into shouts, guards pushing closer. Her strength faltered. She swayed but caught herself on the table, refusing to fall. But her eyes caught something, the corner of one page, marked with a seal she recognized. Not his. Hers. The realization hit like a blade. Whoever had forged this, had access to her life. To everything she thought hidden. And then, the stranger's voice echoed from somewhere in the crowd, unseen. She's not lying. The real confession is still locked on the drive. The forged papers scattered across the table like knives, each page a weapon aimed at her. The man in the suit spread them wide, his grin sharp as he held one up for the cameras. This is who she really is, he thundered, and the crowd roared, their faith collapsing into anger. Guards pushed closer, hands on her shoulders. She fought to stand tall, but her strength bled out. Every camera captured her trembling legs, her pale face, her silence. For one terrifying heartbeat, she felt the story slipping away from her forever. The forged seal gleamed on the paper, mocking her, her own name used against her like poison. Then a sudden cry cut through the noise. The reporter shoved forward, his voice shaking but clear. That seal, it's wrong. Look at it. The crowd froze, eyes snapping back to the documents. He zoomed in, projecting the image onto the giant screen at the back of the hall. The seal shimmered under the light, but its edges were blurred, clumsy. Fake. The man in the suit snarled, ripping the page back, but it was too late, the doubt was spreading. She seized the moment, slamming her hand down on the table. If you want the truth, she shouted, then let the real evidence speak. Not his lies. Her voice cracked, but it rose above the chaos, burning with desperation. And then, another shock. The stranger appeared again, emerging from the crowd, the flash drive still in his hand. But this time, his eyes were not on her. They locked onto the man in the suit. You want truth, he called out. Then tell them who really signed the original contract. Gasps tore through the crowd. The man in the suit faltered, his jaw tightening, his polished mask breaking. She stared at him, heart pounding. What contract? She demanded. But he didn't answer. He couldn't. The stranger lifted the flash drive high, and his voice rang out. It's on here. Every signature. Every deal. Every betrayal. The room erupted into chaos, half screaming for him to reveal it, half chanting for her to be taken away. She clutched the edge of the table, her knuckles white. The walls seemed to close in. Guards on both sides, the crowd splitting like a mob, cameras devouring every second. Her chest heaved with panic, but her eyes burned with fire. She would not fall, not yet. The man in the suit lunged at the stranger, fury twisting his face. But the stranger stepped back, his smirk cold. Careful, he warned. You expose yourself before I even press play. The crowd surged forward, screaming. For a breathless instant, it felt like the world would implode in that very room. The torn check, the forged confession, the flash drive, all threads pulling tighter and tighter around her throat. And then, a deafening alarm shattered the hall. Red lights flashed. The building speakers crackled to life with a single chilling message. System breach detected. Evidence uploading worldwide. The alarm howled through the marble hall, its shrill cry cutting through every scream, every whisper. Red lights pulsed across the walls as the words echoed, system breach detected. Evidence uploading worldwide. For a moment, no one moved. Then the room erupted. Cameras flashed like lightning. Phones buzzed with alerts. Screens lit up with documents pouring into the open, contracts, signatures, transactions. The lies he had buried for years were flooding into the world. The man in the suit lunged forward, grabbing the stranger by the collar, his voice a raw snarl. Stop it. Shut it down. But the stranger only smiled, cold and calm. Too late. The world already knows. He shoved the man back, holding the flash drive high. This isn't about her silence. It's about your empire burning. Her knees almost gave way, but the roar of the crowd held her steady. People were gasping, shouting, turning their cameras toward him now. The power that had weighed on her for so long was shifting, tilting away from his grip. For the first time, she wasn't prey. She was the storm. The forged papers fluttered to the ground, meaningless now. She bent down, lifted one scrap, and held it high for the cameras. This, she shouted, her voice raw but fierce, is how he rules. With lies. With fear. With signatures that never belonged to him. Her words were no longer just defiance, they were truth. The man in the suit staggered, his face pale, sweat dripping down his temple. "You'll regret this," he hissed, his voice breaking under the weight of exposure. Guards hesitated at his sides, no longer sure whose orders to follow. The crowd's chant rose louder and louder, "Show the truth. Show the truth." And then the final blow came. The reporter turned his camera screen toward the hall's massive display. The original contract appeared, every page scrolling across. Names. Dates. Payments. And at the bottom, his signature, fraudulent, repeated, copied across deals worth millions. The proof was undeniable. The hall exploded in sound, shouts, screams, cheers colliding. The guards stepped back, lowering their hands. His empire crumbled before their eyes. He slumped against the table, a man stripped bare, his golden cufflinks glinting like chains. She stepped forward, standing tall in the chaos, her chest heaving, her eyes blazing. "You wanted to destroy me," she said, every syllable sharp. "But tonight, I destroyed you." The crowd roared, the chant shifting, "Her name. Her name." The stranger met her gaze, the faintest nod passing between them. Whatever his motives, he had lit the fire, and she had carried it to the end. The balance was hers now. She lifted her arms high, broken scraps of the check in one hand, the glowing phone in the other. The red lights faded, the alarm died, but the chant only grew. Cameras captured her, not as a victim, but as a victor. And as the man in the suit was dragged away by his own guards, she stood alone at the center of the storm, stronger than she had ever been. For the first time, the silence was hers to command. Freedom. Victory. Justice. The world erupted in applause.